Okay, today we're going to talk about what you can do to lead not only a higher quality of life, but a longer life as well. The first thing I recommend that you do is get some blood work done. If you get a comprehensive panel, it's going to tell you what your specific needs are. Then you can target those needs. So things like your cholesterol levels, your blood sugar levels, your hormone levels, your vitamin and mineral levels. If you know where you're at, you can make targeted approaches or take specific steps to address those needs. So blood work is your first key on your living longer and higher quality of life. An extremely important thing that you need to live a higher quality and longer life is strength. There's a big correlation. For example, if you're in the low end of the strength category versus the high end of the strength category, there's a 250% chance of premature death or dying more quickly if you're in that low strength group. If you're interested, Dr. Peter Attia has done a lot of research into correlations of different markers and longevity, so you might want to check it out. Some specific things that you can do to test your strength and your likelihood of leading a longer and higher quality of life is a dead hang. So this is for 40-year-olds. You may be a little bit older than that, so you could take off a little bit of time, but the example is if you're 40 and you can dead hang, that means hang from a bar for 2 minutes as a male, you're gonna be in that higher strength category, or that's one marker or one test for that higher strength marker. If you're a female and 40, you should be able to hang for 1.5 minutes. That's one marker for that high strength category. Another is what's called a farmer's carry. So if you're a man, you should be able to carry your own body weight. So you'd have half your body weight in one hand, half your body weight in the other hand. You should be able to carry that 2 minutes as a male and 2 minutes as a female. However, if you're a female, you only need to carry 75% of your body weight. So that would be 37.5% in one and 37.5% in the other. Those are two markers show an increased likelihood of longer life. So grip strength, which both of those employ, is a key component when it comes to living longer. Also, cardiovascular death goes up 200% if you're in the low end of the cardiovascular fitness group versus the middle end. If you're in the low end versus the high end of the cardiovascular group, the chances are 400% higher. So with just a little work, anybody can get into the middle high category, which is our minimum goal. The middle high category would be a VO2 max in the 75th percentile. And the scope of this video isn't to get too detailed. If you go online, there's plenty of VO2 max calculators. A common one is a walk run for 1.5 miles, but there's others as well. So if you're interested, check some out online so you get an idea of what your VO2 max is. Now, in addition to cardiovascular, there's some things that are often neglected as we're in our 40s, 50s, and beyond, and that is power, okay? We often don't do things that require power. So what's an example of power? That's doing things quickly, like a box jump, like doing ladder drills, which you may have seen people do football drills. Jump rope is another example of a power type movement or quick type movement. You don't want to neglect your power movements as you age. Now, there is one thing you want to remember if you're doing power movements. As we age, we're more likely for injuries. So when it comes to things like box jumps, jump ropes, and even ladder drills, but less likely ladder drills, you want to start slowly and work your way up because there is a greater risk of an injury in your 40s, 50s, and beyond versus in your 20s and 30s. So with the power exercises, start slowly. Another thing we want to do to make sure that we have a high quality of life is do things through a full range of motion. I see this all the time where people have difficulty squatting all the way down. So for example, they can only squat like 2/3 of the way down. Well, we weren't created to just squat 2/3 of the way down. We want to actually be able to squat low and hold. So if you can't do this, I would recommend that you work your way up to that. So being able to squat fully is important if you want to lead a high quality of life. Besides squatting deeply, it's important to stretch through a full range of motion. When we stretch, like on our pecs, for example, these often become short and tight. So pulling the arms all the way back is a good idea. Also, when it comes to stretching, we also want to strength train. So I'll see a lot of people in the gym like they're doing curls, which isn't the greatest exercise in the world for functionality, but that's a whole nother story. They're only going like to here. Well, we want to take our biceps through a full range of motion. And not only our biceps, we want to take our whole body through a full range of motion. So don't be doing partial range of motion unless you're doing it for a specific reason. We want to exercise through a full range of motion. Another thing that's so important and often neglected as we age is balance. Balance is lost as we age naturally. There's things in our brain that change, and it's called proprioception, and that's body awareness in space. And believe me, if you don't do anything, it's just gonna go down and down and down and down. You might actually want to give yourself a test. See if you can stand on one leg for a minute. If you can, great. If you're stumbling after a couple of seconds, you may want to work on balance. Balance is key. How do we improve it? Well, like everything, we need to challenge it. So standing on one leg is a good idea. Walking heel to toe is a good idea. Even doing some of our exercises in a staggered stance, like so, this decreases the base of the sport, makes it harder. So if I were doing curls, which I mentioned earlier, this is going to challenge my balance. So doing things that challenge your balance is a good idea to help you lead a higher quality of life. Another thing that we need to do to maintain that high quality of life is stretching and trigger point. I've done lots of videos on these, so if you want more detail, check out some of my other videos. But stretching and trigger point are neglected by most people as we age, and that's one thing that will prevent you from walking around like a hunchback, to feeling stiff all the time, to just moving awkwardly. The more limber you are, the more mobile you are, the higher quality of life you're gonna have. So spending a few minutes doing stretching and trigger point is gonna help you with your quality of life. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to leading a higher and longer life, or a higher quality and longer life, is healthy nutrition. You can't eat poorly and expect to live longer and to feel good throughout your life. So one of the things I've mentioned in many of my videos is green vibrance. Having some type of multivitamin, multimineral, superfood, probiotic is a great way to ensure you're getting the basics. So Green Vibrance is the brand that I recommend. That's a good starting point. In addition, you might consider garlic. It's one of the most often recommended. It's good for heart health, and it's also good for immunity. Two things that we need as we age. And also, like I mentioned at the outset, if you haven't done some testing for your blood work or urine, it's a good idea to get that tested so you know where you're doing good and where you're not doing so good. Doing those things is gonna make you and help you live a higher quality and longer life. You can do this. This is Glenn, and we'll see you next time.